We begin with breaking news. India's military says it's hit 9 targets in Pakistan and in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. Pakistan says India has fired missiles across the border in at least 3 locations. The Indian army says they targeted what they describe as terrorist infrastructure and that no Pakistani military sites were hit. The strikes follow an attack by gunmen in Indian-administered Kashmir 2 weeks ago, in which 26 people were killed. Well, Kemal Hyder joins us on the line from Islamabad. Kemal, what more do we know about these attacks?
We do know that, as you mentioned, that there are 3 locations where the attacks took place. Let's go with Bahawalpur first. This is in the Punjab province. It is also a center for a religious school, a madrasa run by Maulana Masood Azhar. He, of course, has been blamed by India of running terror networks. Pakistan, of course, has always said that there is no credible evidence to suggest that any Pakistani was involved in the attack on Pahalgam, where those tourists were gunned down and massacred almost over a week ago. After that, the tensions were mounting. India vowed revenge. Friendly countries requested both India and Pakistan to step back from the brink and to tone down the rhetoric. The Iranian foreign minister came to Pakistan. He was going to go to India to try to convince both sides to exercise maximum restraint. The United Nations Secretary General also advised that both countries should exercise maximum restraint. However, the Indians have now carried out that attack. They have admitted it. The Pakistani military has confirmed that 3 locations have been hit. We've been hearing fighter jets at night. Just a little over an hour ago, we heard activity over the skies of Haripur. That is where I am right now, heading back to Islamabad. We also have reports that there have been a number of casualties. Some pictures of the injured are streaming out on the social media. Pakistan, of course, had already said that any attack by India would be replied in kind, in reciprocal action by the Pakistanis. And so this is indeed a grave escalation because these are 2 nuclear-armed countries. Pakistan had condemned the massacre in Pahalgam. Pakistan had asked for an independent inquiry, a transparent inquiry to cooperate, to find out who the culprits were. And the Indians have still not been able to arrest whom they say were Pakistani-backed terrorists. They're still at large. There's been heavy Indian military operations inside Kashmir. A lot of houses have been demolished of suspected alleged terrorists on the Indian side. So, indeed, this is a dangerous situation. It will be important to see how Pakistan now responds, because Pakistan has been promising that there will be a reciprocal response. Also, making matters worse, the Indians have suspended a water treaty. We have reports now that one of the major rivers in Pakistan, that is the Chenab, which flows through Indian territory, that the waters there have receded. The Indians have stopped that water supply. Pakistan had said earlier that any attempt to divert or to stop the water flow into Pakistan would be tantamount to war. So indeed, a dangerous and precarious situation. We will get the exact details of the casualties as time goes by, because, as I mentioned, there are 3 different locations. You mentioned 2 of them in Pakistani-administered Kashmir, one in Kotli and the other in the provincial or the area capital of Pakistani-administered Kashmir in Muzaffarabad.
Okay. Our correspondent in Islamabad, Kemal Hyder, joining us on the phone there. Thank you. Well, Natasha Cole is Director of Centre for the Study of Democracy and Professor of Politics and International Relations at the University of Westminster, and she joins us live from New York. We appreciate your time. So let's begin with that. This is a huge escalation, and as we heard our correspondent in Islamabad saying there, these are two nuclear powers. How concerning is this, not only for the region, but for the world?
It is definitely a very concerning development because India and Pakistan are both nuclear armed powers, and also they have a long-standing history of rivalrous perceptions and continuing hostilities now and again. The worst affected, as always, as I've often argued, are going to be the people in the region, the Kashmiris, who are caught between the competing and proprietorial and rival postures and attitudes of India and Pakistan. In this case, I think the fact that this happened is not that surprising, because within India, in spite of the moves they had made in the aftermath of the Pahalgam attacks, the tragic Pahalgam attacks, there has been a domestic pressure building up for a more militarist response, given the fact that there is a particular hyper-nationalist government in power. So I think domestically it would have been very difficult for them, and we could see many of their supporters and others lampooning them over the last weeks for not being strong enough. And in that sense, sadly, this was a countdown to a greater escalation. And hopefully it won't proceed much further beyond what has already happened with these strikes. Another thing to bear in mind is that in every such instance relating to any issue on Kashmir, there is also a lot of rhetorical and verbal statements specifically referring to the other side of the line of control, the Pakistan-administered Kashmir. We saw this in August 2019 after the revocation of autonomy, when there were statements made about taking control of Pakistan-administered Kashmir region as well. And I think this is more of that same kind of rhetoric, but also some action that due to the domestic pressure seemed to be necessary.
Natasha, you mentioned there that there was domestic pressure within India after that terrible tourist attack on that beauty spot site in Pahalgam. In terms of the attacks then, do you think that this is perhaps a warning, and could it have been worse?
So we will find out in the coming days, depending on what the casualty figures, what if any the casualty figures are going to be, and how targeted these strikes were, and all of those other details. But I think what we can be sure of is that given that those attacks, the attacks in Pahalgam, and were followed by questions that were raised about accountability and security lapses, the government needed to be seen to be doing something. And yesterday, in fact, very recently, they had also announced various kinds of military drills and disaster preparation exercises in various cities across the country. So it's not entirely unexpected that this happened. But as always, it's the Kashmiri people who are going to be caught up in this. Much depends on how Pakistan will choose to react, whether they will say that they will respond later, as they have done, or whether this is going to escalate. I think in that context, again, the different sorts of domestic voices within the two countries will play an important role. And in none of that will the views of the Kashmiris, who are going to bear the brunt of all of this, will be taken into account. I also find it interesting, given my long-standing work on how gender relates to the region, because these two countries have very proprietorial and possessive attitudes to the region of Kashmir, that this has been called Operation Sindoor, Sindoor being the vermilion-colored powder that married women put in their hair in India. So it's interesting that in various kinds of symbolic ways, this was an attempt to respond strongly and to assert that India is going to take revenge, which is what people were hoping for within the country. Many voices. Of course, there are lots of other sensible voices that caution against whether this kind of tit for tat doesn't have any eventual end. And every single time that this happens, it either we have a situation where it gets better, or it escalates into a greater, more full-blown conflict. And given the current global dynamics and lots of other difficult situations going on in conflicts elsewhere, it is important not to forget what's happening in this region and how important that is for the people there. I mean, certainly, I'm in Princeton University, so I'm not in New York, although I'm on that time zone. But from here, I can see that there have been these long-standing tensions between these two countries that have now gotten to this point, and it's exactly what those perpetrating the attacks would have hoped for, to escalate the hostilities and to show that this is not a state of normality that we are seeing in the region.
And Natasha, you mentioned there the long-running hostilities. I just wonder for our viewers to remind them that, of course, this has been a long-running tension between the two sides. But in terms of Pakistan, they have denied involvement in that Pahalgam attack. Why do you think now this has all come to a head in terms of that tourist site terror attack? Why has this trouble now reared its head again?
Well, I think there's several factors to it. I think, firstly, the tensions in the region have never really gone away. It's only when we have some kind of spectacular incidents of violence that Kashmir features in people's attention span. But for the people since 2019, in particular, they have been their political rights have been under severe duress. And the elections that were held there last year, when the Indian Supreme Court required them to be held after a very long time, those elections, and as well as the tourist push, seem to, on the part of the Indian narrative, convey this idea that everything is now normal, and that the situation is getting better. So this actually reverses that whole narrative and shows us how fragile that even any claim to normalcy in that region is, and how in the aftermath of any such thing, the sensible thing of investigation and evidence and accountability and security lapses and all of that, is the hard but important stuff, often can take the back seat because it becomes about jingoistic rhetoric on how each side, and by sides I mean India and Pakistan, want to sort of assert their claims to being the stronger party here. A war, a heightened conflict and escalation is in the interests of neither of these two states. And I would like to believe that many in the two states, and including in India, are aware of that. However, the fact that since those attacks, there has almost been, like I said before, almost a countdown to when will the strong response come, made this somewhat inevitable. At best, one can hope that there is a way out to de-escalate if if this is seen as something that needed to have been done and has been done, and given the fact that this happened in the across the line of control, that sort of rhetorics on either side will somehow be able to address the situation, but the hope is very cautious here at this point. And also we are, I will emphasize probably for the nth time, it's the people in the region, the Kashmiris, who are not being served by any of this. And this is why it is important for the wider international actors also to pay attention to a situation like this in the absence of a, spectacular instances of violence, because unless the underlying issues are addressed, we keep having repeats of this kind of very dangerous tinderbox situation, which can spiral out of control.
Okay, Natasha Cole, we really appreciate your time and analysis. Thank you very much.
Thank you.